Hello, ActiveSage here on the Sage channel, and I'm going to really quickly go over exporting objects from Maya or your similar 3D program and getting it into Space Engineers. Now, first thing you'll need to do before even building your model, or if you even have, is make sure that your scene is set up correctly. That is Windows, Settings and Preferences, Preferences, and then going to Settings down there, and just make sure you're set up in meters. And then, of course, to get the proper block size, I believe a small ship block is I'm using it down here, is 0.5 meters in every direction. So there you go, that's a 0.5 meters square, but a large ship block is 2.5 meters in every direction. There we go. But anyway, deleting that, you see I already have a basic box here set up, and I'd use scaling there because it's already just set at 1 originally. So no problems. Anyway, what you're going to want to do is make your models, have it all ready to go, and then you want to make sure you have the proper plugins installed, and of course your Photoshop stuff to set up your textures. Now, to do this, you're going to need to make sure you have your FBX exporter for the actual models. You're going to need to make sure you have a Havoc content tools, which is this thing here. You're going to make sure you need that, and you're going to need a NVIDIA texture tools, which is going to come in handy once you're exporting your textures from your Photoshop or something similar. Anyway, I'm assuming you have those now. There's a link in the description if you don't, so go ahead and grab those and then continue on with the tutorial. Alrighty, so assuming that you've gone back into Photoshop now, once you're got all those plugins all set up, you're going to want to do your UV snapshots, which are of course from your UV editor. You've made your UVs, you do polygon, UV snapshot, boom, you export your UVs. Then of course you would go into whatever your photo editing program is. Here we go, we have our texture. Basically we have our UVs here, which is what gave us an idea where to UV stuff. I'm assuming you already know all that, that's why I'm breezing it over. And this is where I've set up my diffuse, my spec, and my normal. Now usually this would be perfectly fine. It gets a bit funky here for Space Engineers, because if I go into my channels here, you can see I have two alphas. Now this alpha is the emissive for Space Engineers for the object I'm exporting, and actually it's a bit counterintuitive because anything that's white is not going to be emissive. It's not going to be glowing actually. And this one here is actually my specular map. It only uses black and white, and I know that's a bit bad to have pure black, but it doesn't seem to be registering pure black anyway. I'm not even sure that's working exactly properly at the moment, but anyway, that's how that's set up. And the way we're going to do this is, if we're exporting our diffuse, I'm just really quickly going to go in here and delete our specular map one, just to make sure it doesn't get exported with it. And I'm going to do Control-Shift-S. I'm exporting everything into the same folder right now. It's just a random folder on my computer where I'm storing this stuff. It's probably where I'd store the Maya file as well. And of course, it's where I'm storing the Photoshop file. So anyway, we're going to want to do D3D/DDS. You can see it right there. It's the DDS. It's a .DDS. You select it, and then our diffuse is going to want to be exported as a DE. So when I say DE, I mean file name _ DE. And that's very important to have the underscore in the whatever it is. So you file, save as, export, and then this thing pops up. And at this point, you want to just copy the settings I have here. I'll leave it up for a second to make sure you do that. It's basically, for the pull down here, it's a DXT5 AR GB 8 bitmap, I guess. BPB is what it says. And then interpolate alpha and then generate bitmaps and all that stuff. Pretty much all this is set on just defaults. So there you go. Once you got that all set up, you just click save, and it exports it as such. Now what you're only going to do, if you've done this the same way as me, is now Control-Alt-Z to undo and get your specular back. Now we're going to delete our alpha that counted as our emissive. We're going to go back into our layers. We're going to turn on our normal maps, and now we're just going to export these the same exact way we did before, but instead of it being _ DE for diffuse emissive, it's going to be _ NS for normal specular. And there we go. Now we got this set up. It's the same exact thing as before, and again, just save, and there you go. And the reason I was having to hit enter a few times there was, of course, because I was overwriting my already existing one. So now we're done with this. Just make sure you undo that and save if you got anything really important there, or even I would suggest actually saving before you export. That way, if you do screw something up, you can just close it out and not save. Anyway, now you got your textures that you needed. You can go back in here. You can open up your hyper shader. I'm assuming you already know how to do that. And I've just made a Lambert. Basic Lambert. I've named it cryopod _M. That's very important to actually name your material because you don't have to be tying to that later. At this point, you're basically going to set up your textures as you would normally with your going in here and setting up to your, what you would call it. Where did I put that file? right there, cryopod. Basically setting up your diffuse to your underscore DE one, and setting up your normals, your bump mapping, to your underscore in S1. Nice and simple. You get the idea on it. So that's pretty simple. Done with that. I used a Lambert. They didn't exactly specify which one to use, so who knows, maybe in the future I'll end up using a Fong or something. Anyway, now you can select your model that you want to export. These are to merge together. You do File, Export Selected. I'm going to export it again to that same file I've been using for everything else. So Cryopod FBX is just what I'm calling it. And there you would export it. And yeah, I'll go ahead and overwrite it. There we go. It's been exported. Now, for collision maps on these things, they currently don't work. But what you're going to need to do is basically make a primitive like this square. And you're going to need to move it and shape it into the shape you want to be the collision box for these things. And you can see here I've actually already done that. That's why I'm being a bit silly with that, is I already have these collision boxes set up here. And what you're going to need to do with this is one at a time. You're not going to want to merge them. As far as I can tell, you're going to want to go to that Havoc content tool at the top here, which is one of the plugins you would have had to have installed, and do physics rigid create rigid body. And then you want to so click on that, and this will deselect everything, but then you'll get this little RB thing popping up here, and then do that again for any other collision volumes that you've created. Now what you're going to want to do is select both of these, do Havoc Content Tools, click on the export. I click the little square next to it. I'm doing selected only, that way it doesn't export everything, because you definitely don't want that. And then you can do apply and then export, and then this pops up. Now what you're going to want to do for this, and this is going to mean some poking about for you, is you're going to want to add these things here. Now the way you do that is by finding them in here, and I believe transform is under here somewhere, right there. So you're going to want to select that, you're going to click add, and then it'll pop up with these options and stuff here. You want to find physics, that should be under physics, so physics 2012, create rigid bodies, so find that here, right there. You want to click add that there, and write the platform. You're going to want to be finding that probably in here again, I would suspect, again, and then just do the add. And now you'll have all three of these here. Make sure they're in this order. Now you're going to want to click on this one and make sure all of this is set up exactly as I have it here. They made very clear to state in their little text tutorials that it has to be set up as it is here. So make sure you do not mess any of this up. There is a 1 here, a 1 right here, and a 1 right here. Again, that is a 1 at the top left of the top row, a 1 at the far right of the middle row, and a 1 right in the middle of the bottom row. The rest of them are all zeros. On the physics create rigid body thing, I can't remember if they had us do anything special. Just take a long hard look at this and copy it. Pause the video if you must. I'm assuming you've paused the video. I'm going to carry on now if you need more time on that. And then we're going to go right to platform, and at this point you select basically that same folder where I've been exporting everything. I've exported this one to a different one, but you would want to export it to Cryopod 4 game, and then it's basically the same name as your model, except for it's got this HKT, which it'll automatically add, of course, and that is just the Havoc file. And then you just click on Run Configuration. Boom, it exports it all out, as you would expect. Alright, so now let's move on to the terrifying and painful stuff that is code related. So now we're actually done, completely done in Photoshop and Maya. We can actually close those out if we like. Really, you probably want to leave them open just in case something goes wrong or you realize there's an error somewhere. What you want to do now is go to the same file place where you've been saving everything. I actually have a few extra things here. Just ignore those for the time being. Those are backup files. What you're going to want to do is File, New, Text Document, and, oh, my Jesus Christ. You're going to want to name it the same exact thing as your model. So there you go. I've named that the same thing as my model. And I actually already did this, so that's here. And inside it, you're going to want to paste all this nonsensical looking code here. Trouble, isn't it? It's wonderful. Now, I should have a link to their help pages if you don't want to, of course, type all this in. And also, I should have a copy of this actually in there. And this is your XML file. So once you've got this copied in, you want to save it, of course. So Control-Shift-S or just save as. And then a .xml, and it should save it out as that. And I've already done that. Now the thing is, you're going to want to change some of this, of course. So where it says model name, you're going to want to enter the exact model name that you exported. So cryopod. This is what I got here. Now all this is pretty much default. You want to make sure it's the same as I have here. But you come down here and material name. This is the material name that your material actually had assigned in your 3D program. You're going to want to make sure that's exactly right. Coming down all the way down to here where it says texture, you're going to want to put in textures / models / whatever. This is basically the directory where you're going to put your diffuse and diffuse / emissive texture. Same with normal map texture. You're going to want to do the same exact thing here. Same spot, except for, of course, different name for the normal map / specular. Now that you got that set up, we can actually make sure you've saved this, close it, and now we're going to want to take our FBX that we exported, the .hkt that we've exported, and the .xml that we just created, copy all of those, and now we're going to want to go find the actual install folder for Space Engineers. So, program files x86, Steam, Steam apps, common, and then Space Engineers. We're in here, and we're going to want to go to tools now. And what we're going to do with this is, let me actually delete some of these things I don't need to have in here. We're going to paste all of what we just had, what we just copied in here, and now we're just going to click on this thing here, the MWB builder, or MWM builder, pardon. And what's that? It's going to see a little thing pop up. Oh, it's gone already. Did it work? Yes, it did. Look here. It's now created a cryopod.m. So now that we have our MWM, we're going to take it. We're going to go back to, oh, nope, not common, sorry. We're going to go back to here. So basically one layer up from where we were in tools. We're going to go into content, and now we're going to go into models. And I'm just dropping all of my custom models right here. You can put them in a custom model file if you like, but it means you're going to have to change the code a tiny bit from what I have. Right now, I just drop them in here. And of course, I'd have to replace it because I already have one here, but I'm just going to leave it for the time being. And just imagine this is where yours would be, and there would be nothing else in here probably. Now, what we're going to need to do, this is the final stage, is we're going to go back to, not common, pardon, content again, but out of models. We're going to go to textures here. And now we're going to go to models, because this is a models texture. We're going to take our _DE and _NS, copy those, and paste them into here. Now, something you're going to want to do, which I should have actually mentioned earlier, is you're going to want to have made another image in Photoshop. Basically, this is the icon that is going to show up. So what I did with my icon, I'll just open it really quickly, was I took a little quick screen cap of my cryopod, colored it blue, and then just saved it out as a .3D or a .dds with the name cryopod icon. It doesn't need any special underscore or anything with that. Any name will do. So anyway, that's what this is. I'll tell you where to put that in a second. But now that we have those two texture files, you've copied them from here, and you've pasted them in here. So really what you should have is those, and then the fake and random and dither. Those are the other things, are just basic stuff that should already be there. So don't panic. Even if they're not, just don't panic. It's fine. The main thing you just need to make sure is that your custom model textures are here. Now that you've got those there, we're going to go back to content again. We're going to go into, actually no, we need to still be in textures, but only one layer down. Not in models, but just on textures. We're going to go to GUI, which is graphic user interface, icons, and then we're just going to drag or copy and paste our icon for our model into here. Oh boy, and I've pasted the wrong things, but imagine you pasted in the correct things there, which would just be your icon file. So now that you got there, we can go back into content again. So it's Space Engineers content, and now we're going to go to data. And in here, we're going to want to find Cubeblocks. Now, when you open this up, it's going to look like this. For me, someone who doesn't really like code and someone whose eyes have trouble finding words and big walls of text, I go insane on this, and it took me ages to get this working because I missed something very simple. And what you're going to need to do for this is another basically copy and paste from the developer side or from my comments section, or not my comments, pardon, but my description. And what you're going to need to do for that is right here, we have Cubeblocks. This is a earlier edited version of this, where it has the definitions and end definitions. So basically up here at the top we have our start here where it says definitions, and then down here we have our close definitions, and then this is repeated with each different object that exists. So you want to take that, do your Control C on wherever this is. So you're going to want to take your copy of this from either the developer site or my description. You're going to go into the real Cubeblocks that we just had open a second ago, and what I do to make this much simpler is after those very first definitions here, I just hit enter 3 times and go up once, and then you paste this in there. That way you can tell that this definitions is inside of this definitions here. I'm going to just make sure we have the same amount of spaces and stuff in there. I don't think it matters, but I just want to make sure. There we go. So anyway, this definitions is within this overall definitions, because way down here at the bottom it has another closed definitions, which I actually passed. But it's coding stuff I don't like, but you need to be able to at least somewhat deal with it. So here you go, at the end it's definitions, because it's closing out this one different model that we have right here, and then the very final closing of all definitions. Where at the top here it's opening of all definitions, and then opening of this specific definition, closing this specific one, and then more models. Anyway, so here we go. You'll have this copied in here. You want to keep your type ID as Cubeblocks. You want to turn your subtype ID to the name of your object. Your display name of your object. I think you might be able to put a space in there, but I haven't, just out of fear that something might go wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can. Then, of course, for the texture that's here, the GUI icons, and then see how it's got cubes here, we can remove that. And that would basically see where we saved. It was just under GUI icons. Now, I actually did just remember that when I saved out or stored my texture for my icons, so under here, instead of just saving it here, I actually put it under cubes, which is why I have this extra slash, because this is just saying, right here, this is saying, okay, where is this? This is a file path from textures, which, say it's a file path from content. So it's starting at content and saying, okay, textures, GUI, icon, cubes, oh, and then of course the name of your texture, or your texture that is your icon. Sorry if it's a bit babbly. Anyway, cube size, large block, at least that's what I wanted mine as, is a large block. Topology, triangle mesh, this is all default right here. And then size, default, model offset, default, still default. I believe there's another section they say to add in here on their own tutorials, but I don't add that in here. All this is pretty simple until you get to models. Again, this is pretty much just from the content page. Oh, nope. From content, it's just saying, okay, content where? Content models, and then basically just cryopod was right in there. So it's just your MWM file. So there you go. Components, that's for building it and stuff. That's not fully there yet. What do we have? Critical construction. For mounting points and all this stuff, I just leave it as default. You can fiddle around with this all you like. I don't fully understand it yet. I think it has to do with the center point of each face and leading out from that, but there's only 4 of these instead of 6, so it's sort of like one of these must be mirrored or something. I get thrown off, so I'm just leaving that be. And then of course we have some basic stuff here that we don't need to change until you get to here. Block pair name, I put that as cryopod, that way all these match up. And then, so that'll be, again, whatever the name of your object is, will be right there in that little spot. And then you come down to, yeah, all this is just set to true. Awesome. So that's great. Once that's all in Cubeblocks, you just do your save thing here. You can close this out now. You've actually finished. If you followed all this, I'm happy for you. If you haven't, I'm sorry. I'll try to put out another tutorial in probably a month or 2 once I've understood stuff, and especially I'll put out one definitely if things have changed. So everything is done now. You have all your files and all the right stuff. Again, that cube block we were just editing, file we were just editing, if you missed that somehow and still followed me through, that is under content, just as everything, and then data. That's where we find our cube block right there. So now we have the cube block set up, we can actually go ahead and just launch our game. So I'm gonna get that open. Alrighty, so here we go in game. I actually started up a new world, and if you look right here, you can now see your cryopod or whatever you've exported will show up here with the icon you had made. And you simply click and drag that down, and you can put it in here. And you can see here, I have the cryopods in game. Now their collision mesh will, of course, currently still not working right, so I'm actually running into something here, as you can see. But, you know, I'm sure eventually that'll get sorted out, and hopefully we won't have to re-export that Havoc collision mesh stuff. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope this helps you out. Sorry if it's been a bit ranty or hard to follow. And obviously, sorry I don't fully understand the way these connect to each other using that one area of text of coding nonsense that I couldn't quite follow, because obviously I can place these in some weird ways, and I can't exactly place them in others you'd expect like that. But anyway, again, thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll make a new one of these tutorials if they change anything noteworthy. And yeah, again, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys later.